Hello and welcome. It is 11 o'clock on the dot here on a Wednesday night and awaiting our next winter storm. What could be, again, a significant ice storm, a major ice storm, especially for the south side area. You can see it here on the radar picture. Things are lighting up off to the south, and you can also see some of the upper level energy. We actually have two vorts, if you will, two upper level energy areas. One of them is springing out ahead of the storm system and really is the first part of the storm that we're going to get later on tonight and into tomorrow, coming across the Ohio Valley into the Tennessee Valley with a lot of mixed precip here. Mainly just some heavy snow from Charleston, West Virginia through the Kentucky area into Nashville, Tennessee. And we may see this start as snow. One thing that's changed, if you look at everything, is it's still clear in a lot of areas, and that is allowing temperatures to fall. We've got some very dry air in place, and temperatures outside are well into the 20s across some areas. Other areas are into the 30s. We're at 32 degrees at the airport in Roanoke, but here at the TV station, we were at 30 just a second ago, now at 31, and we are in the lower 30s elsewhere. Maybe some middle 30s right now in Southside, it looks like. However, the dew points are very low. That's some very dry air down into the teens across a lot of backyards. And at my house, the temperature is only 27 and the dew point is about 21. And I'm about right here just to the northeast of Rocky Mount. What will happen is as this moisture moves into the dry air, and by the way, that's probably now going to be a little bit later, about 2, 3, maybe even 4 in the morning. But I think around 3 in the morning for most areas is when we'll see this start. It will initially evaporate because of all this dry air that's in place. But because we have cold temperatures, once it does reach the ground and we've got that evaporation again occurring, that's a chilling process. It basically it takes heat out of the atmosphere. So the temperature is going to end up being in between this 32 and 19 degree dew point. So we'll be down into the 20s once the moisture sets in. Not worried about the lack of cold air with this system, or that could actually be a bad thing if you don't want ice, because at the lowest levels, that is what's going to happen. We're going to see the plenty of cold air in place. I'll put the temperatures on here. We'll fill them out for you. And you can see that things are definitely cold enough to the north here. That's the direction our wind's coming from at the surface. So this disturbance still has a way to go as far as going east. But, if we analyze it here just live, you can see it's a fairly good swath of moisture. A little bit of a dry notch here. That could probably be a lull later on tomorrow afternoon. I wouldn't call it a dry slot per se. It's more of a notch. But any little saving grace we can get with any break in the precip would be welcome news because of the threat of ice. And that always occurs behind thunderstorm activity. If you look at the lightning data showing up from Birmingham down to New Orleans, there's some lightning in here. And behind that, you see the area of drier weather. So sometimes these storms, if they can develop strong enough, they'll block the inflow of moisture. I don't think that's going to happen as much this time. It's always possible, but I do see a lot of moisture coming in pretty much across the area late tonight into the first half, at least for Thursday, and into the afternoon, and then maybe letting up a little bit as we go into Thursday evening, only to re-energize possibly for Thursday night as this area of energy out across southern New Mexico and Texas nears the area. So we'll put this in motion for you one more time now with the water vapor enhancement, and you can see the flow it's out of the south. It's coming more out of the south rather than being out of the west. And you can even see the energy that's diving into this, continuing to carve this big trough out here across the four corners. It's diving into this long wave trough in the jet stream, and that jet stream is opening up now to the south. So we are starting to see, we got surface low pressure in the Gulf of Mexico. That's a good direction for moisture for us. And you can now see in the past hour or two, precipitation in the form of rain across Atlanta, down to Brunswick and Albany, Georgia. That is starting to open up. We're starting to see more rain showers develop here, and this will be advecting and moving northward into the rest of the overnight. So I do think it'll still be about, Tazewell County's on the edge of this, but a lot of that's probably evaporating. Maybe about midnight here, Tazewell to Marion, but most areas from Princeton, Radford, and the Roanoke and Ferrum are looking through Lexington at about a 2 to 4 o'clock onset due to the evaporation holding it off maybe a couple of more hours. And again, we still have some drier air out here that's allowing the temperatures to fall to the east. So that's bad news for you folks in Southside, because I think your temperatures still have some time to get even colder out there as we go through the rest of the evening. Looking at the snowfall reports, and this gives us an idea of what's potential, for our area in terms of snowfall. I like to go back and read these reports that are actually verifying from the ground. We've got up to 3.5, almost 4 inches of snow in Kentucky, and I didn't make a snow map this time, but I'll verbalize this by telling you I think most areas are going to see at least some snow and sleet at the beginning of the system, so that when you wake up early tomorrow morning by 5, 6, 7 o'clock, we'll have about 1 to 4 inches of snow and sleet on the ground. It could be mainly sleet for some areas, but if you're north of 64 or near I-64, north of the Roanoke Valley here, if you live from Covington and Lewisburg into Lexington and the Botetourt County, Newcastle, Perrysburg, and Bluefield, areas also to the north of Lynchburg, Amherst, up to Stanton, Waynesboro, this area here up to Monterey and up to Elkins, of course. This area probably will see closer to 3 inches of snow and sleet, and probably up to 6 inches of snow by the time it's all said and done, maybe a little bit higher than that the closer you get to Stanton and Waynesboro. All right, and then if you get closer into the Hagerstown area, where my sister's at, north of Winchester, they are looking at about 8 to 10 inches of all snow there. But we do have this warm air coming up, mixing the snow in with sleet, changing it over the freezing rain, and we've got all the way from Meridian, Mississippi, which is east of Jackson, to Birmingham, Alabama. We've got sleet and freezing rain, but the Huntsville area of Alabama seeing some wet snow up to 4 inches in Madison, Alabama. And so it's an impressive system to look at, just how much cold there is. And unfortunately for our poor friends in the Texas area, it's a disaster. This is nothing short of a disastrous weather setup. And a tragedy, a human tragedy, with the power system there going out, and temperature still only in the single digits and warming into the 20s. They've been without power now for a couple of days. And I don't know what to say about that. That's just horrible. But hopefully here we'll keep a lot of our power if it's all sleet. If we see a lot of freezing rain, expect the power to go out here as well. Luckily, nothing quite that cold out to the west. So let's look at the high-resolution HER model. This is a near-term model. Every hour it updates. Let me refresh here, see if I have an update at 3Z. I do. See if it goes out. Goes out 7 hours. So we'll look at this one first, but I'll show you the 2Z because it's a full model picture there. We'll get our map bearings, and again, this takes us every 15 minutes now. So as we go to midnight tonight, that'll be 5Z. Another hour or so, that's about right where we're seeing stuff now. We should start to see some development in the Asheville, North Carolina area over the next couple of hours, and that's going to scoot closer into Galax by 1:30 or 2 in the morning. I do think between mainly 1 and 2 a.m., the NRV from Blacksburg to Pulaski, this area along I-81 south of Roanoke and west of Roanoke, we'll start to see some snow. Could be some very heavy snow. And listen, the ground's cold this time. I've got my laser thermometer out, and we were checking some of the pavement temperatures, and it's amazing with the sun being out, this pavement temperatures were in the mid-60s with the sun hitting it on the sidewalk and everything, but the actual, shade pavement temperatures were more like the mid-30s. Just the difference of that sunshine. That's why on a cloudy day, and when you have temperatures below freezing even, sometimes that snow will melt. But this is a situation where it's coming in at night. We don't have that solar radiation going through. We actually have temperatures that will be getting colder as the precip sets in. So when the sleet and snow start in a few hours, it's going to stick instantly. It's not going to be a situation like last Saturday where the roads were just wet and the only thing we had to worry about were falling trees and power lines. This is going to be with the falling trees and power lines, yeah, again, but we're also going to have the compounded issue of some just very slick roadways. Sleet, actually, you can somewhat drive in. It also bounces all over the place, so it's loose. But I tell you, it looks pretty slick out there where the areas are going to get this quick burst of snow that comes in. Now, notice as we move through, let's see, 8Z would be putting you up against, see, 3 in the morning, and then 4 in the morning, 9Z here. You've got the sleet in pink showing up, and now we've got freezing rain. So sometime between, according to the HUR here, sometime between 2 a.m. and about 3 or 4 in the morning, we're going to see a lot of that snow turn back over to our old nemesis, the sleet, and the purple areas here on this map anyway, freezing rain. Heavy snow, though, is possible, and the model may not be right. Some of the other models have a little more snow where the sleet is across the Allegheny Highlands especially, and we could see sleet stick around longer, as the NAM model suggests, in these areas across Franklin County and the Lynchburg. But, this is at, let's see, that's 5 a.m. So at 5 a.m., most areas should be getting mixed precipitation and or just freezing rain. Notice the freezing rain goes all the way down to Interstate 40 into North Carolina. So by 5 a.m., Danville has freezing rain, according to this model. Roanoke City this time has a good chance of seeing significant ice out of this, or significant sleet. Roanoke's probably going to ride that line in between the snow and sleet and the ice and the sleet. But predominantly sleet, I think, for Roanoke, and that would actually be a saving grace. South of Roanoke, it's predominantly freezing rain that I'm mainly worried about. And even into Roanoke, I'm still worried about some freezing rain. But we're looking at amounts here that are going to continue to total up throughout the day on Thursday. We look at the previous hour, which goes out, this is the previous hour on the model. Very similar. The model's got a good handle on it. That's usually a sign of that. You can see far southwest Virginia actually gets into the plain old rain, but the wedge it's holding this cold weather in place, it's firmly entrenched, and it's probably not going to erode. For Saturday, we actually had some erosion of the sub-freezing temperatures, in that the temperature was able to climb to 33, 34 by around lunchtime on Saturday. So it was mainly a morning ice storm, even though the damage continued into the day because the trees were still at freezing, and that takes a while for that ice to fall off. This time, that's not going to happen. We're going to stay at or below freezing mostly through, I think, for the entirety of our Thursday. And we may not climb above freezing until sometime Friday mid-morning or so. So this is going to be a long duration thing, because once freezing rain starts, it gets on the surfaces out there and it starts weighing the trees and power lines down. It can stop, but for several hours the damage is already done. Gravity is always in effect, right? Gravity always continues, so that weight is going to continue to be an issue out there. Now, that'll put down a lot of trees, I'm afraid, and a lot of power lines. The HUR model actually has us jumping back into sleet at times. This is more than likely some dynamic cooling around 7:30 to 8 a.m. back over to some heavy freezing rain. So at times we may go back and forth and may actually see some snow still in there for late tomorrow morning around the Stanton area north of the Roanoke Valley. So we may go back and forth, but predominantly freezing rain is the concern. Now, as we go into the lunchtime hour of Thursday, notice it lets up a little bit at some point. That this first wave will have a back edge to it. It'll start letting up from the west by early afternoon, and we'll still see, though, across the eastern areas now, central Virginia, our friends that are still without power from Saturday and were hit so hard, this still has its bullseye right over you once again, but maybe over a larger area also into the New River Valley. I'm really concerned about freezing rain this time, but this continues into the afternoon hour, so that break will stop at some point because the upper level winds are still going to be blowing out of the southwest. So if we see some drying, it will only be a lull, meaning a temporary break in the precip at some point mid to late afternoon, maybe evening on your Thursday, but it's going to redevelop more than likely Thursday evening and the Thursday night. And as this model shows, you can see those spotty areas of freezing rain, freezing drizzle continue. That means the wedge is still there, and that purple means your temperatures are going to still be below freezing out there. So that's a serious situation. Here's the rapid update cycle, the 0Z run. This is a similar kind of a competing model to the HERS, so we can compare it and contrast it here. This is the state of Virginia, and again, we've had high pressure in control. Now, the difference again with Saturday is that our high was weaker and farther up to the north, so we were able to get the rain in here and the ice not so much in the afternoon. This time, again, it's going to stay freezing or below, so all frozen precip, even though it may fall as liquid. And that's another thing, real quick. I know I get sidetracked sometimes. Saturday, I had a lot of people saying, well, I don't see anything. It's just raining. Yeah, that's freezing rain. It takes a little while to get everything, going in terms of getting the glaze of ice out there to thicken up and get where it pulls the limbs and everything down. It's kind of a slow motion process, but it's going to happen. And again, a lot of areas north of Roanoke and maybe even near Roanoke, I think even in Rocky Mount, will start as some snow and sleet by around 3 a.m. Now, the RAP model shows that happening as well. This is, let's see, 2 a.m. on the RAP model here, showing freezing rain as the starting precip type. So, you've got some different model scenarios here. I still think we'll see snow and sleet to start. But if this RAP is correct, this RAP model, if we are starting as freezing rain, we're going to continue more than likely as freezing rain all night, the rest of the night and into Thursday. So everywhere you see purple is freezing rain on this particular map. The RAP model, this is now at 9 a.m. tomorrow, has more of a red area, which on this site is sleet. Going back in the Roanoke and Franklin County, I know it's kind of hard to read, but this is Virginia here. Notice your snow line is way up to the north across northern Virginia and the northern Greenbrier Valley. But then we go back and forth a few times, so again, it's going to be kind of iffy. We can look at all the moisture that we're going to get, and I'll show you that in a second, and try to divide it up into precip type and say you're going to get this much freezing rain, this much sleet. That's what's going to happen. But the truth of the matter is we may go back and forth in some areas, and that's going to be impossible to pinpoint, which is why I'm broad brushing, coating the 4 inches of snow and sleet with a ½ inch to an inch of ice. And that's, in some cases, I think the maximum amount of ice is going to be more than it was on Saturday. Coastal low tries to get going here. This is at noon. This is at 1 p.m. Notice the RAP also has a lull here across the NRV and the Roanoke Valley by 1 p.m. tomorrow. But the central Virginia area, Rocky Mount, Smith Mountain Lake, Bedford, and East will still be in freezing rain for most of the early afternoon. Because once that lull moves through, we will see things redevelop to the south, move back in for Thursday late afternoon and evening. So at some point, different models have different projections of this little slot of a lull here, but the upper level winds, and I'll show you that here. Let's go to our jet stream. It's been a long day, and this goes through Thursday. You can see the winds everywhere still out of the southwest. So we don't go to northwest winds and dry out, not like a huge dry slot moves in. These are all, that's a moist direction, and that's going to keep the moisture in place for the most part. So don't get too caught up in any breaks that we may see tomorrow, because more will probably be on the way as everything at the mid-levels too. I'm showing you the relative humidity there. Looks like it's firmly in place in terms of moisture. This is the Euro, the 18Z run. I actually have access to the in-between model run, so that's the most recent runs, the 18Z, and this is at 1 a.m. has everything just entering the far southwest part of the area as sleet and snow. The sleet is in orange, the snow is in blue, the heavier snow is in darker blue, and that may be falling. We may have moderate snow snow in Botetourt County by 4 a.m., 5 a.m. into the Greenbrier Valley. That's the best chance of snow accumulations. There's going to be some sleet accumulation too, but the other concerning thing on this Euro model is look at all the pink. That's freezing rain. So this starts as a little bit of snow and sleet, but the Euro is still showing too. This is like this, second or third model now that we've looked at that has for Southside, and that's what I would call any area south of Roanoke and Lynchburg, in this case in Bedford. This starts as freezing rain for some areas and really gets going. Some heavy freezing rain again at 7 a.m. tomorrow. This is off the Euro. Sleet, heavy sleet falling, and maybe thunder sleet as well, falling through West Virginia, north of I-81, north of Roanoke, all the way up to the Highlands. And we don't get the snow until you get up to Stanton and I-64 and areas to the north. Notice the rain line's well to the south. And again, I'll mention it one more time. You look at this and say, okay, so that means if I look out the window at 7 a.m. Thursday, I'm going to see a lot of ice. You may not, because this, again, is a process. And the rate of rain, sometimes if it gets too heavy, will actually bounce off the objects before it freezes and stay on the grass. But, you know, there's some fickle things that happen with freezing rain. That's why some areas were hit so hard. Others on Saturday were not hit as hard. Just half a degree or 1 degree in temperature makes all the difference. 15Z is 10 a.m. Still very heavy freezing rain, adding up quite a bit. And again, this is the worst case scenario is the Euro, and unfortunately the Euro is a very accurate model for the most part. Overall, it does a very good job, unfortunately. Fortunately for forecasting, but unfortunately this time around showing quite a bit of freezing rain and not much of a let up here. Now this is an older model. It doesn't do what the near-term models do, so it doesn't have this break coming up for Thursday afternoon and evening until later on, maybe around 7 p.m. But even then, it doesn't get through here by 7 p.m. It takes until 10 p.m. And again, the front is still down to the south, just close enough to where those upper level winds, which are running parallel to these lines, these thickness lines here, are going to still be blowing in out of the southwest. And why does Jamie mention that? Well, because that could give us 1 or 2 more areas additionally of freezing rain. Maybe ending as a little spurt of snow in the mountains on Friday. Here's how it looks on the Weather Prediction Center page for those of you who like to track the fronts. We've got, again, low pressure in the Gulf of Mexico, large cold high in the perfect place for ice, and it would be the perfect place for snow if not for the warm nose, which, again, on some modeling here, especially on the NAM, shows more sleet. Heavy ice showing up there in the orange areas. That's where, let's see, this is the Storm Prediction Center site, has ice likely. Mix is in the purple here. You got to pay attention to your color schemes, whatever model maps you look at. And this inverted trough, which is basically the reflection at the surface of the upper level system that is initially moving in. But we've got coastal lows developing here as well. 1036 millibar high, bringing down that cold air. Now, as we go through Thursday evening, more of the same. Again, we stay locked in with moisture and a lot of moisture. And I mentioned this may end as a coating of snow. It may start as snow. It may end as a little snow for the entire area coming up here Friday morning, and some lingering flurries and snow showers Friday evening. Saturday, turning quieter. Maybe not quite as windy as we were fearing. That would be a horrible thing if the wind picked up Thursday or Friday and Saturday with all that ice weighing down these trees. A lot of them already damaged from last Saturday. That would be bad. So let's hope for less wind Saturday too. But I want to show you what's happening Monday. There's going to be a front pushing in, and the WPC here has rain, but I can tell you that the Euro has snow. And more in the way of moisture. This is light rain showing up here, but I've got moderate amounts of snow possible in my 7-day forecast. So stay tuned on Patreon for the latest on that. I'm going to put an update out before I go to bed on the Monday system. The amount of moisture is fairly impressive. We're looking at least a 3/4 of an inch to about 1.25 inches. So averaging around 1 inch of liquid equivalent. in terms of moisture. Now this is the wrap model at 21Z, which is, I picked 21 not 0Z because it goes out further. An inch and a half of liquid precip. So we have a lot of moisture with this system. So even if half of that's ice, and let's say the other half is snow and sleet, we're still looking at some significant ice, enough for some damage, unfortunately. The new GFS is coming in. I was looking at that right before I jumped on, just to kind of show you different modeling here and what happens. The GFS warms us up probably too fast. This is coming up for, well, actually, that's Thursday night. It actually doesn't warm us up too fast. Okay, so this is looking at 1 a.m. This is looking at 7 a.m. freezing rain. It's a low resolution model. This particular site uses that low resolution in terms of the lines here. But you can see heavy freezing rain on the GFS as well. That's an ice storm, folks. And then going into the evening hours of tomorrow, still freezing rain. Not a big breakup in moisture. In fact, the second low on the GFS gets going, and we see more in the way of moisture moving back in. And it does erode this wedge too fast. More than likely, this will still be all freezing rain through here, maybe ending as a little snow. We may see more development in the Friday. This may be something to watch because, honestly, there's a big trough here. Look at the thickness lines. Your upper level winds blow kind of parallel to those. There's a lot of energy in the upper levels that lingers off to the back here, and that may keep things going in the Friday. Don't be surprised if models trend back a little bit and give us a little more moisture in the Friday as well. This is a look at some of the modeling here. We'll show you real fast. This is the total snow off the NAM. And then we can show you, that's for the whole thing, by the way. This is the total ice off the NAM. Now the NAM is going with a lot of sleet in Roanoke, so you can see those lower numbers. But where it's going freezing rain, we're looking at a ½ inch or so, third to a ½ inch, because it's got a lot of sleet. It's the best case scenario for Roanoke because it only has a little bit of freezing rain around Lynchburg too. But it will still be enough to cause some slick spots and some weighing down of some trees and power lines. And again, some of those are weaker and already compromised from the last system on Saturday. So may not take a lot, may not take a ¼ of an inch of radial ice to put down some additional trees and tree limbs and everything like that. It may be more damage just because of what the last storm did. The Euro high res, this is the 12Z. I want to look at the 18Z. Stand by. There's your snow totals off the 18Z Euro. So maybe about 2 inches northern Roanoke County of snow. 1.6, 1.5 to 2 inches, maybe 2.5, up to 3.5 to 4.5 north of the Roanoke Valley in the Botetourt County and Rockbridge County. However, the sleet and the freezing rain, especially off the Euro, the freezing rain is very high here. Nearly an inch of freezing rain. And now this is a flat surface projection. And the National Weather Service this year started using flat surface measurements. So that's if this is your deck and you've got freezing rain on it, you just simply measure how much freezing rain you have on a surface. We used to use radial ice accumulations, and that is still what we use for, it's a little confusing. That's still what we use for the damage threshold because on one side of a tree limb, 1/4 of an inch of ice is what can put down tree limbs and trees. But really that's a ½ inch of flat ice. Makes sense? So we add both sides together really to get the flat ice, and a little bit falls off. So it's more like 4 to 10 ratio of radial to flat ice. However, again, most areas had about 3/4 of an inch, 0.75 or less this time around. Snow Creek Saturday had about an inch actually, and they were hit pretty hard, lost power for days, and just got it back on, I believe. But according to the Euro, we've got another system very similar to that coming up with this one, and we're looking at up to an inch, ½ inch to an inch. Most areas are above ½ an inch of flat ice. So it could be over a larger area that could include Roanoke. Don't be surprised, too, if Roanoke goes more in the direction of freezing rain if the Euro is correct. It honestly could go either way. I have a feeling we're going to see some snow and sleet try to battle it out here over the Roanoke Valley, and then to the south, significant amounts of freezing rain. National Weather Service also they're doing a great job with this, I believe. And if you go to their winter weather page, I'm going to show you, I actually agree with their forecast. By the way, the radar is back on in Blacksburg. The tech's got it back up and running and tonight. So your app is now going to have that detailed radar that you like to see once again. And I'll be able to show you better radar maps, and everybody else will too. So winter storm warnings in effect for the entire area. They've got things coded here. Ice generally a half inch to 3/4 of an inch. Locally lower amounts, locally higher amounts too. Sleet and snow, an inch or less in the Lynchburg Southside area. Greenbrier Valley, West Virginia, and Botetourt County, Craig County into Lexington, Rockbridge County, looking at maybe up to 5 to 8 inches of snow, but in up to 1/4 of an inch of ice. So heavy snow in some locations. I think it's going to be more like moderate snow with a little bit of ice and sleet thrown in. They've got Roanoke, Blacksburg, into Christiansburg and Wytheville here. The I-81 corridor through the Roanoke Valley, NRV, Salem, and Benton at 2 to 5 inches of snow and sleet with about 1/10 to 1/4 of an inch of ice. Again, I think it's going to be more like 1 to 4 for most areas. And I think that's a safe call for them, too. They're going a little more snow and sleet based on what the NAM has there, and that probably got factored into the national blend of models. Here's their ice forecast. And they upped it again. They've gone back and forth on some of this, but generally, again, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice with areas, again, South Boston, Charlotte County, Campbell County, Franklin County, and particularly Floyd County once again. This area, western Callaway up to Endicott and the Franklin County, even in the Rocky Mount, looking at a good 1/2 inch of flat ice, probably enough to do a lot of damage, and potentially up to 1 inch of flat ice here. Lower amounts because across the northwest part of the area could be more sleet and snow, but still amounts that would be significant enough to do some damage in Lewisburg and in the Blacksburg as well. So again, this could be a far-reaching, long-lasting storm. Notice the big cutoff here around the Roanoke Valley. This is basically 460. It always is 460. That is coincidental, by the way. And these things moving in at night, also, that's just a coincidence. Somebody asked me that on Patreon earlier. Lewisburg, Covington, Lexington will be big snowfall winters. I think Bluefield's going to get some snow, but we're going to have a lot of sleet in here as well. And in this area, a coating, but the main story is going to dominate. We're just going to have a lot of ice out there. So ride it out, folks. I hope that you took the advice that I gave you earlier today and you prepared for this, because it does look pretty bad. Just want to tell you that. But you're probably going to have the threat of trees falling by the morning, by mid-morning. And don't forget, if the precip tapers off, don't expect it to do that forever. It may redevelop. Plus, if you already have ice on the trees and the power lines, you're still going to have things falling well into probably Friday, because we've got to get that to melt off before we can, get rid of the threat for power outages. So batteries, flashlights, devices, charge this right now. If you've got the power banks, hopefully you have them charged. I'm going to head home, be doing things from the home office tonight. Probably will take a mini nap here and wake back up early. I like to be here when the first flakes and first sleet pellets and first drops of freezing rain fall. So I'll probably be back up by 3 in the morning, and it will stay with you through this and provide you with frequent free updates on Facebook and all my social media accounts. And we'll provide you with the latest modeling on patreon.com for $1 a month. Helps me fund, and actually totally funds now, the data, like that lightning data that you see. And by the way, just a little heads up, this spring, because of La Nina, is probably going to be pretty active in terms of severe weather and rotation. We've already seen a lot of tornadoes. I'm going to put a blog out in about a week or so on Patreon about the significance of La Nina. The last big La Nina was in 2011, and that's when we had the Pulaski tornado. So just to kind of get you thinking, because we already are in severe weather season across the Gulf states, And it may not be long before we transition out of this wintry stuff and jump into spring. I don't want you to be caught off guard by severe weather. Because we've had severe weather here this time of the year in February, as our friends near Appomattox can tell you. That's all for right now. I'll have more updates throughout the night and into tomorrow. Stay safe, everybody.